Okay, this week we are going to learn about radical equations. That doesn't mean cool, it just means equations that have a square root symbol in it. So we're going to take what we've learned and really just apply it. But really it's the idea that when you square a square root, it cancels the square root. That's what we're going to be doing. So for example, in number 1, square root of x equals 9. Okay, that doesn't mean x equals 9. It's the square root of x equals 9. So what do you do in this case? Well, how do we cancel out the square root symbol? We square. So if we square one side, guess what? We got to square the other side too. Whatever we do to one side of an equation, we have to do the same exact thing to the other side. The entire other side. You know what I mean? Okay? So we square that, and then the radical goes away, but then what is 9 times 9? 9 squared, that's 81. So our answer is x equals 81. What we want to do in these problems is get the radical by itself on one side so that we can square it and then square the entire other side and then get rid of the radical. Okay, so number 2 is the following. Copy it down, please. So like I just said, we need to get this by itself on one side. We're going to get rid of the 10. And then we've got 11 minus 10 is 1. This goes away. Then we square both sides. Radical goes away, and p equals 1. Number 3, negative 9 times the square root of x minus 7 equals negative 27. So like I said, we need to get this radical by itself on one side. We got to get rid of this negative 9 here. It's being multiplied by the radical. There's a multiplication sign there. So what we're going to do is divide negative 9. But now we have square root of x minus 7 equals 3. Then we just square both sides. That's the next step. I should probably do that in a different color. Square both sides, that's the next step. And then we're going to just use that and get rid of the radical. That's what that does. We squared the entire thing right here. Okay, x minus 7 equals 9. Okay, we're going to bring this up here. X minus 7 equals 9, and then we're going to add 7 to both sides. And then x equals 16. We're done with that one. All right, number 4. Well, we already have what's under the radical pretty much by itself on one side. So what we're going to do is just square both sides, square this whole thing here, and square the 2. So that's going to get rid of the radical on the left. And we just have n divided by 9 by itself, no radical, equals 2 squared. We squared both sides, it's 4. Now, what do we do in this case? Do you guys remember? You guys remember what we do? What we do is when we have a variable divided by a number, we multiply both sides by that number to get rid of the denominator. So we multiply both sides by that. It means we have basically a 9 in the numerator and the 9 in the denominator, so they cancel. That's why we do that. Okay, now that just leaves the n by itself, the n over the 1, equals 4 times 9, 36. All right, last one. So in this case, we've got to get what is under this radical, or just radical right here, by itself on one side. So what do we have to get rid of? This negative 8 here. So let's divide both sides by negative 8. Why? Because negative 8 is being multiplied by this value here. So we've got now negative 8's canceling. And the square root of 49a equaling 7, right? Negative 56 divided by negative 8 is 7, knowing our multiplication tables. Now, how do we get rid of the radical, the square root? Like we did before, we square both sides. We square this, that gets rid of the radical, but then we got to square the other side too, because it's an equation. Equal stuff on both sides. 49a now equals what? 7 squared. That's 49. So then we got to just get rid of the 49, divide both sides by it. And then a equals 1. We're done with that one. Radical equations.